Hello everyone, welcome to my Nirvana channel. My name is Paul and I'm over the moon to be joined today by Dr Natasha Campbell McBride. I first came across Dr Natasha Campbell McBride around 7 years ago. She was being interviewed by Clive de Carle at the UK column, and the information was absolutely incredible. It changed my life and I'm sure it changed many other people's lives. So welcome Natasha. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Great. So my business is selling supplements and herbs and things like that. I've recently built up a decent sort of customer base. And one of the things that I've noticed is that many of my customers have autoimmune disorders of various kinds. And when I first started out, I had no idea whatsoever how common these disorders are. They're absolutely rife. I mean, I've come across endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, MS, Hashimoto's, IBS, rheumatoid arthritis. It's incredible. So perhaps you could tell us why that is. What's going on in the world at the moment?
Yes, autoimmune disease has become an epidemic. We can use that word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an epidemic in parallel with many other illnesses in the world. That is the Western world in particular. The Western world is the leader in all of these chronic diseases, particularly Anglo-Saxon world. That's certainly ahead of everybody else, the countries that speak English language. And then other countries in the West are following very closely, and the rest of the world is catching up, because as they adopt our industrialized Western lifestyles and ways of doing things, they're getting ill just as much as people get here. All of these disorders are environmental. All of them are caused by what we do to our environment, to the planet we live on, and to ourselves. I don't know why people think that they can destroy the environment and be safe themselves, be okay themselves. We are part of that environment, part and parcel of it. We are not separate from it. And the more we damage the environment, the more we damage ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an epidemic of many chronic diseases, not only autoimmune. We have epidemic of mental illnesses, allergies, learning disabilities in children. We have an absolute epidemic of autism in our children. The recent statistic I was sent by one of my scientific friends is that 1 in 15 7-8-year-olds in eastern coast of America now are autistic. 1 in 15.
Wow.
1 in 15. 30 years ago, when I started working in medicine, we were diagnosing globally, all over the world. We were diagnosing 1 child in 10,000 with autism. It was such a rare disorder that majority of people never heard the word autism, and the majority of doctors have never seen an autistic individual. Today, it is an absolute epidemic, 1 in 15. And that line is climbing very rapidly. The scientists have predicted that in the next few years, we'll be diagnosing 1 child in 2, and it'll continue climbing. The other half of our children will not be healthy either. They have hyperactivity, dyslexia, dyspraxia, eczema, asthma, autoimmune diseases, and so on. And adults are not healthy either. Adults, parents of these children and all adults around have all sorts of chronic illnesses, mental and physical. Chronic fatigue syndrome is an epidemic. Fibromyalgia is an epidemic. Allergies, again, asthma, eczema, digestive disorders, skin disorders, kidney problems, heart disease, various heart diseases, lung disease, various problems. Autoimmunity is a group of conditions where the immune system produces cells against its own tissues, where the immune system is actually causing the symptoms in the body. And there are best part of 200 autoimmune conditions identified so far by our mainstream medicine, and the list is growing. Pretty much every chronic condition, and many of them are mental, and majority are physical, are now classified as autoimmune disorders. Autism now is an autoimmune disorder. Schizophrenia is an autoimmune disorder, and depression, and many, many other things. And of course, the conditions that you have listed.
Mhm.
And the mainstream medicine still lives under the old paradigm that in autoimmune diseases, the immune system is silly, doesn't know what it's doing, and it starts attacking its own tissues for no good reason. So when you go to a doctor with these symptoms and they find those antibodies in your blood, in your tissues, they say, oh, you've got autoimmune disease. So your immune system is producing these cells to destroy, to cause all these symptoms that you have. So we need to beat the immune system down, so it stops attacking your own body.
Mhm.
And they start giving you powerful drugs to destroy your immune system. Steroids, immune modulators, immune suppressing medications, all sorts of things. And that's the old paradigm. And of course, because of this old paradigm, the medical establishment believes that autoimmune illnesses are all chronic and they're incurable. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to live with it. All we can do is suppress your symptoms by beating your immune system down, because it's foolish and it's just attacking you. The reality is, and now we know that through recent research into microbiome and the gut flora and the microbial community in your body, the recent research, now we understand that that old idea is completely wrong. The immune system is never misguided. It is not silly. It knows at every point what it is doing. What happens in people with autoimmune disease, their tissues get contaminated by man-made chemicals from the environment. Huge part of that environment is food, water, anything you take inside yourself nowadays is contaminated. Everything you buy in a supermarket nowadays, including things labeled organic, because organic concept has been corrupted, and you cannot trust organic label in supermarkets. Everything you buy in a supermarket now is full of agricultural chemicals. Many of these chemicals are classified as broad-spectrum antibiotics. So you're eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and plus a plethora of other agricultural chemicals. On top of that, if you live on processed foods, the food industry takes all that produce that the big agriculture, industrial agriculture, laced with chemicals and grow with chemicals. Then they take this produce and process it, adding lots of other chemicals. And denaturing proteins, denaturing fats, denaturing carbohydrates, just destroying the whole nature of food, making it even more damaged, more destructive, more disease causing. And people live on this sort of stuff. They eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And of course, that's a huge amount of pollution coming into their bodies. On top of that, people lace their bodies with personal care products, shampoos, deodorants, creams, lotions, and potions, which are all petroleum products. Our chemical industry has invented more than 100,000 of new chemicals which don't exist in nature. And many of them, most of them, are produced out of petroleum, out of oil. And they all absorb through your skin instantly. In seconds. They're in your blood. In seconds. And because they don't exist in nature, your body doesn't know what to do with them. They accumulate. They get stored in various tissues in the body. So you become a toxic dump living in our modern environment. You're accumulating chemicals and toxicity and denatured food particles and other things and petroleum products in your body, from food, from water, from everything you put all over yourself, from your toothpaste, from your shampoo, from your makeup, from your nails, from anything and everything. Plus, add to that laundry detergents, dishwasher powders, chemicals you use in your household for cleaning your house, decorating materials, building materials for our modern homes. Our modern homes are very toxic places. Shopping centers, hospitals are very toxic places because of building materials and all the sterilizing chemicals that are used there. So the list is just growing and growing. So people's bodies become a storage site for this huge amount of man-made chemicals.
We really are. We're living in a toxic world, aren't
we? We do.
Yeah,
and we are part and parcel of this environment. We become the dumping grounds for that toxicity. The more you watch advertising on TV or trust advertising anywhere, the more you accumulate in toxicity. in your body. And what these toxins do, many of these toxins have an ability to attach themselves to your proteins in your body. If you take water away from your body, and about 70% of your body is water, that's what scientists tell us, the dry weight of your body is 50-50, protein and fat. And both proteins and fats have receptors on their molecules where toxins can slot in. They fit in like a hand into a glove into those receptors. And once that chemical attached itself to your protein, let's say in your knee joint, right? That protein in your knee joint, and usually it's a protein of collagen. Collagen is the elastic molecule that holds our bodies together, gives us the elasticity, gives us the shape and form. And joints in particular have a lot of collagen, huge amount of collagen. And if this chemical attached itself to a molecule of collagen in your knee, that molecule of collagen becomes dirty, contaminated, and its shape changes. It looks different. Your immune system is constantly surveying your body, checking everything. It finds this molecule, looks at it and says, gosh, you're not mine. I don't recognize you. What happened to you? And the first thing that the immune system will do, it will launch a reaction that it has right on the shelf, ready packaged, ready to grab and use. And that is inflammation. So your knee will get inflamed. What is inflammation? The knee is swollen, it's red, it's hot, it's painful, and it doesn't work. The function is limited. That's inflammation. So when people get that, they're diagnosed with arthritis, they're given drugs to beat down the inflammation, anti-inflammatory medications, usually non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications. And if the situation continues, then they're given stronger and stronger and stronger painkillers and anti-inflammatories and so on. So if this situation continues, and that collagen in your knee is still contaminated, on top of that, more toxins coming in and in and in, and your collagen becomes even more contaminated all the time. If you continue eating the same things and using the same chemicals, then your immune system decides that inflammation is not enough. It will then learn about that contaminated, dirty molecule of collagen, study its shape, its look precisely, and create particular weapons called antibodies, which destroy that particular molecule, dismantle it and remove it. If it can't clean it, inflammation is cleaning. Inflammation tries to clean that molecule, remove the toxin, leave that collagen nice and clean. But if that's not enough, then the body will start producing antibodies. And that's in the medical circle, in our allopathic medicine, is called autoimmunity. And at that point, the doctors start attacking your immune system, trying to really destroy it. But you are still contaminated. Your knee is still dirty, all that collagen. And this dirt keeps coming in. So more and more of your collagen molecules are getting contaminated. And now not only in that knee, in the other knee, in your elbows, in your fingers, in your toes, and in your neck, and in your spine, and everywhere else. So the inflammation and the autoimmune attack go parallel, neck and neck together. And you just try to suppress it with drugs. And that's what autoimmune disease is. So any sensible, any clear-thinking person will think, right, well, is it the right thing to beat the immune system down? It's actually trying to clean me up. It's trying to deal with the situation, trying to help. All I need to do is stop the toxin coming in and then clean myself up. Assist the immune system in cleaning my body up, removing these chemicals, removing this toxicity. And only then, when you're clean again, only then your body will be able to stop the inflammation, stop the autoimmune attack, and all the symptoms will stop. The pain, the swelling, the limitation of function, and so on.
So can this be done primarily through diet to reverse this?
Absolutely. Not only diet, everything has to be changed. Remember, it's everything, that your whole environment. Your diet, obviously, what you put inside your mouth is a huge part of that. Very important to change your diet. And the diet that I'm the creator of the GAPS nutritional protocol, the GAPS diet. This is the diet which will nourish your immune system, balance your immune system, allow it to do the work properly of cleaning you up. And first and foremost, it will allow your body to stop that river of toxicity coming in through the digestive system.
And would this be like an ancestral diet? Basically, you know, before supermarkets, what our ancestors used to eat, natural foods?
Yes, GAPS diet has been fashioned on ancestral traditional diets from all over the world, the way people used to eat for millennia all over the world, before we got industrial food and industrial agriculture and all these other industries, which changed all our recipes, changed the way we eat, changed production of food, changed everything, basically. So the first thing that is done in the GAPS diet, we remove all processed foods. Second, we try to source foods, natural foods. We buy everything in the shape and form that Mother Nature made it. If it doesn't look like what Mother Nature made, we do not buy it. No packets, no tins, nothing pre-prepared, nothing processed at all. And we cook everything at home because you cannot trust anybody to cook your food, particularly takeaway restaurants and other outlets where you eat. The ingredients they use, the practices they use, simply
well, this is one of the sad things, I suppose, is that if you like going to restaurants, you know, once you start thinking about it this way, it kind of puts you off, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything they do in the kitchen, you don't know what they do in the kitchen and what they're using there in the kitchen. So if it is health that you're after, then the beauty of GAPS diet is you can recover, you can heal yourself, become strong and robust again, bring you back to normal health and balance. And then on an occasional basis, you can go out and eat. As long as you don't eat complete rubbish, as long as you try to, you become more discerning. You try to find better places to eat where people use more natural ingredients and better recipes, and you'll be all right. Perhaps your body, because human body has an immense resilience. It has an amazing ability to protect itself, to look after itself, and deal with any damage.
And we're all self-repairing, aren't we? So we're all self-repairing, yeah.
It's your own body that heals itself, repairs itself, cleans itself, governs itself. All we have to do is treat our bodies with respect, because it's an immensely intelligent being. It isn't silly, it isn't stupid. And not throw things at it that our clever science and clever medicine and clever industry thinks that we are so clever, so much cleverer than nature. We will show nature how clever we are. And the result of that are these epidemics of autoimmune illnesses and mental illnesses and all these other disasters that people are suffering from. And of course, apart from the diet, that's what comes through your digestive system. You need to change everything outside your body. We have to remove all personal care products, use only natural things, because your skin is not a barrier, it's a sponge. Everything you put on it is absorbed in seconds. Your skin eats everything you put on it.
So we're talking about shampoo, we're talking about toothpaste, we're talking about soap, everything, literally everything. Well, I know Clive de Carle says that, you know, if you wouldn't eat your shampoo, then don't use it because it's going in.
So the rule is in the GAPS nutritional protocol, the rule is if you can't eat it, you can't put it on your skin. You can't wash your hair with it. You can't brush your teeth with it. You can't wash your hands with it. You can't eat it. So always, it's a very simple rule. So if you come there to wash your hands and you look at this thing and think, am I going to eat this? Would I eat that? If not, if the answer is no, do not use it because your skin will eat it. The same with cleaning chemicals in the house, laundry detergents, dishwasher detergents, any kind of chemicals you use in your household, fire retardants, building materials, redecorating materials. Everything has to be taken into account. And a difficult situation is for people who work in toxic places. And it's that toxicity that damages them and causes the disease. So for these people, it's a matter of changing their jobs. Or if you live in a contaminated house that is making you ill, you have to move. So obviously, these sort of things, people have to take time to reorganize their life and take that factor out of their lives, which can be difficult.
So would it be possible to recover your health with a plant-based diet?
No, absolutely not. I have written a book on this subject, which is called Vegetarianism Explained. I'll show you the book. I've got it here. Vegetarianism Explained. Why I have written this book? I was getting all these anorexic girls in my clinic. Anorexia is an absolute epidemic as well. And young people with OCD and other mental illnesses, psychosis, and autoimmune illnesses too. And very quickly, as I would start talking to these young people, I discovered that they became ill because of vegetarianism and veganism. Before commencing a plant-based diet, they were perfectly healthy, these young people. And that obviously made me very interested in the whole subject. I started looking into it. The first thing I've discovered that there is no solid science for us to rely upon on this subject. Every study that has been published on the subject of vegetarianism and veganism have been funded by agricultural complex, the data has been incorrectly collected, incorrectly analyzed, incorrectly written down. The whole thing is manipulated. There is a power behind pro-vegetarian movement in the world, and this power is funding false science and false information. So having discovered that one of the biggest lies is the China study, and of course all the mainstream is waving the China study into people's faces as the proof that vegetarianism is great and it's healthy and it'll save the planet and so on and so forth. It's the biggest lie amongst all of those scientific studies. You cannot trust it.
So what is the motivation behind that lie exactly? What do you think is the motivation? What's motivating them to put that message out there?
So I had to look at the basic studies, basic sciences, and clinical experience. And what I've discovered is that the whole propaganda for vegetarianism and veganism comes from agrochemical complex, global multi-trillion corporations, which own agriculture, which own and rule agricultural policies of the Western world. They put their people into governments, into the ministries of agriculture, and every agricultural policy in every Western government is run by these people. And they also own pharmaceutical industry, and they own medical industry, and they own food industry. They just have fingers in every pie, these people. And when it comes to agriculture, it is easy for them and profitable, highly profitable for them to grow plants, grow commodity crops. Government subsidize it. I mean, that money for subsidies comes from them anyway. It's kind of in a roundabout way, and then they take it back, all of that money. Producing animal foods, however, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, is unprofitable for them, difficult, and painful, because animals, Mother Nature designed animals to be on pasture, on land, on a organic natural pasture where there are more than 60 different grasses and herbs growing together in a mixture, in a community. Only that kind of pasture under the sunlight can provide an animal with good health, proper health. But what they've done, these global corporations, these powers around the world, what they've done, they've taken all the animals off pasture, locked them up in prisons called CAFOs, confined animal factory operations, where the poor creatures don't see the sunlight, never see the light of day. They fed, then they plowed up their pastures. They're growing commodity crops, grain, soya, sugar beet, rapeseed, you have it, all these sort of things. And then they haul, using chemicals, huge amounts of chemicals, and then they haul that stuff into these CAFOs and they force feed these poor chickens, poor turkeys, there's pigs and cows and other animals with this stuff. It is not healthy for these animals to eat grain and soya and rapeseed. These things make them sick. Because Mother Nature designed them to eat grass, to be on pasture. Chickens should be on pasture. Birds should be on pasture because they eat a lot of grasses and herbs. And they find their own meat on pasture, chickens, because they scratch all the time and they eat worms, insects, grubs, whatever they find, and that's their meat. Eggs that they produce is pure protein. So all that protein comes from that meat that they find on pasture themselves. And where do you think the color, the yellow-orange color in the egg yolk comes from? From grasses and herbs that the chickens eat. The carotenoids in grasses and herbs turn the yolk into yellow, and it's vitamin A, it's beautiful, beautiful nutrition that's coming into you. Where do you think the yellow color comes in the yolk? From a supermarket. From eggs that you buy from a cafe, from a supermarket. It comes from a synthetic dye, yellow dye, that's added into the feed of the chickens.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So so just imagine, is that going to give you any health? Of course not.
No.
There is a huge difference between what comes from the grasses and herbs in the yolk and what comes from synthetic dyes that are added into the feed of the chickens. And the feed, basically, of all of these animals for CAFOs is made out of 3 major ingredients. That's wheat, that's soya, and 99% of soy production all over the world is genetically modified. So all our animals in these operations are eating genetically modified soya, genetically modified grains, and rapeseed oil, which is also desiccated with glyphosate, which is one of the most poisonous chemicals on the planet, glyphosate, Roundup herbicide. And all of that is in this feed. So their milk is full of these chemicals. And they are unhealthy, these animals, because they need to be on pasture, and they should not eat grain and should not eat rapeseed oil, and they should not be eating soya. These things are bad for them. They're not, nature hasn't designed them to eat these things. But that's the profitable part for the big agriculture. To produce these plants, majority of all that production goes for these poor, unfortunate, imprisoned animals who are force-fed this stuff. And because they're sick, they have to be given expensive antibiotics on a daily basis, expensive steroids. There are lots of practices in the industrial agriculture which are expensive, unprofitable, heartbreaking for the workers who work there, and just don't work. That is why, for the industrial model of agriculture, it is unprofitable to produce meat, milk, and eggs, and fish. They want to get rid of it. That is why the people, these multi-trillionaires, billionaires who are in charge of the whole charade, of the whole industry, they now have invested hundreds of billions into producing synthetic meat, synthetic milk, and synthetic eggs. They're genetically modifying fish as well. There is already genetically modified salmon in the world. So, and there are technologies. I have seen a video where you take a sachet of something, a chemical, produced in China. You open the sachet, you pour the powder out of it into a bucket with water, and the water turns into milk. Looks like milk, tastes like milk, apparently.
Wow.
That's, the meat they make out of plants, basically, in big factories, out of cell culture. They make this slop, and out of this chemical, horrendous, genetically modified slop, they then shape burgers and shape sausages and whatever else. And of course, majority of humanity would not want to eat these terrible things. So now their next step is to destroy animal husbandry altogether. They are now pushing for a new law that they have been at it for decades. For decades, they tried very hard to malign meat, to malign milk, to malign eggs through theories like that it causes heart disease and causes cancer and every disease in the world, and so on and so forth. Just drill into people's heads that meat is bad, meat is bad, meat is bad. Eggs are bad, eggs are bad, eggs are bad. Milk is bad, milk is bad. Don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. And all of this is lies.
Yeah.
All of it is manipulation.
Well, I'm a big lover of animals, and for quite a long time, I deliberated between becoming a veggie or continuing to eat meat. And I guess really it's the veganism, the kind of the people that are pushing it are using the terrible conditions in industrial farming with animals, and kind of trying to persuade people to become vegans. I was a classical guitar teacher for many years, and I taught many teenagers. And quite often I would get to know some of the, particularly the teenage girls would come to me and say, "Oh, I'm going to be a vegan. I'm becoming a vegetarian." And you know, and I just think it's crazy now. I think about the workhouses in London in the Victorian era, Oliver Twist, for example, and the one thing they weren't allowed to eat was meat. So I mean that should like ring alarm bells, shouldn't it? Really?
Absolutely.
Basically, people are moving on to a workhouse diet, aren't they? You know,
the propaganda for vegetarianism and veganism comes from these multi-trillion corporations with fingers in every pie, because it's profitable for them to make the whole planet vegan. They'll be definitely in business, the whole planet vegan. On top of that, they are now, through legislation, through Western governments, are going to, the planning to, I hope they don't succeed, they are planning to destroy animal husbandry. I've explained why. And they designed this very cleverly crafted, deceitful document, this deceitful idea that animals are sentient beings, we must not kill them, and it's bad, it's just bad to eat animals, and so on and so forth. And of course, the propaganda for vegetarianism and veganism is based on emotions and ignorance and manipulation. And this corporations, the people who run them, they're very clever. They employ thousands of clever psychologists to craft the whole propaganda, to manipulate people's minds. They have very clever tools for manipulating people's minds. And the young people become the victims of it very quickly. Young girls in particular, because it's based on emotions and based on guilt, making you feel guilty, and based on ignorance, complete ignorance. The truth is, now we come into the basic biochemistry, basic biology, basic physiology, basic sciences, and clinical experience. The truth is that nothing on this planet can digest plants apart from microbes. Let me repeat this fact. Nothing on this planet can digest plants apart from microbes.
What about cows and sheep and cattle and things like that that eat grass and herbs? And
Mother Nature used that fact in creating the digestive system of a cow, of goats, deer, giraffe, antelope, and other herbivorous animals. It gave them enormous, several stomachs, called a rumen. A cow has 3 enormous stomachs, huge. Majority of her big belly is that stomach, the rumen. And the rumen is full, the stomachs are full of microbes. So the cow doesn't digest grass herself. She's incapable of that. It's that microbial community in her belly, in her stomach, that digests the grass for her. And it breaks it down into nutrients that the cow absorbs and builds up her big body. Human beings do not have a rumen. We have a tiny stomach, very small stomach, and it produces hydrochloric acid. Acidity can be very, very strong in your stomach if you are hungry. It's below 1 pH, can be very strong. And that's a highly hostile environment for any microbe to survive. So human stomach is basically almost microbe-free. There are a few microbes that are holding on there, just hanging on just for dear life, just about, but there is no microbial community. Let me repeat this fact again. Nothing in nature can digest plants apart from microbes. Because we have no microbes in their stomachs, humans cannot digest plants. This is a paradigm shift for many people.
Which is rather ironic as well, because for many years I've been told by different vegetarians that red meat putrefies in the gut, and you don't get rid of it properly, which is the complete opposite, isn't it? So
complete opposite. So plants are indigestible for the human beings, first and foremost. But this little stomach of human beings, which produces hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and other elements of the stomach juice, is perfectly designed to digest meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. They digest beautifully in our stomachs. Then they pass into several meters of intestines where absorption of food happens, and only what got digested properly in the stomach, high up, can be absorbed. So only animal foods are the foods that feed your body and build your body, build and sustain the physical structure you live in, your big skeleton, your big muscles, your big brain, your lungs, your heart, your liver, your skin, all of these organs. They're all made out of cells which live a very short life, only a few days. These cells work very hard, they get old, they die, they get removed, and the body gives birth to new baby cells to replace these dead cells. So this process is called cell regeneration, and it's a beautiful process. That's how your body sustains itself, maintains itself, and heals any damage, rejuvenates itself. In order to give birth to trillions of cells every day, building materials are required. What are the building materials that the body needs? It needs protein, it needs fat, and it needs water. Remember, 70% of human body is water, and then what's left, 50-50, protein and fat. When we analyze human protein in a laboratory, we find that in its biochemical composition, it's almost identical to proteins in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. The same with fat. Human fat is almost identical to fats in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. The amino acid profile is right, everything's right in those, and they digest properly. Plants are full of fats and full of proteins. The most researched protein from plants is gluten, and the more we research gluten, the more we realize that nobody can digest it. Every human being is damaged by gluten, even if you think you don't get symptoms. But your migraine headaches and your skin rashes and your pimples and your digestive problems and maybe occasional arthritis or whatever is likely to be due to gluten that you're eating. And that's just only one protein in plant matter. Plants are full of proteins, and all of them are indigestible for the human digestive system. They do not digest properly. They all contain inappropriate amino acid composition for building our proteins. Certain amino acids are missing, other amino acids are in excess, and the whole thing is indigestible. It doesn't break down properly, and it damages your body. On top of that, we now have a huge amount of scientific data to show us that plants actually produce a lot of substances specifically designed to destroy our bodies.
Right.
To destroy the body, anti-nutrients.
Oxalates and things like that.
That's right. These are lectins, phytates, salicylates, phenols, and all sorts of substances. Why? Because plants cannot run away, can they? They're sitting in one place, they can't run away. So they don't want animals to eat them. That's why they produce all these substances and put them into their leaves, their stems, and particularly into their seed. Because the seed of every plant is their baby. They don't want them to be eaten, they want them to grow. They don't want to drop and grow. That's why the seeds in particular are equipped with huge amounts of lectins, which damage our digestive system, damage our brains, damage our joints, cause autoimmune illnesses, cause all sorts of problems. We now have a large body of scientific data to show that. So in order to digest plants, to process them properly, you have to have a very cast iron digestive system, and you have to have healthy gut flora, microbial community in your bowel. Because what happens in the stomach of a cow, the rumen that she's got the majority of her microbes in the gut there. Humans have it in their bowel. You know that about 90% of human cells in the human body are in our gut flora, in that microbial community that lives in your digestive system. And majority of it lives in the bowel. So that's where the plants can be digested to a degree, and something can be produced from them that can nourish us a little bit. The problem is, the difference is, in the cow, her rumen is at the beginning of her digestive system, where grass is properly digested, and then it moves into intestines and nutrients absorb. In us human beings, our equivalent of rumen, the bowel, is at the end of the digestive system. All the absorption has already happened higher up. It's too late. That is why plants do not feed us. The foods that feed and build your body, your human body, are meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants do not feed human beings. They're incapable of that. They're indigestible and they're damaging for us. So what are plants for? Why do we eat them at all? Plants have powerful cleansing substances in them. They keep us clean on the inside. And they give us variety, colors, flavors, beauty on the plate, and so on. So it's nice to consume plants. But we can only do that if your digestive system is in a good shape and it can survive all those anti-nutrients, all those indigestible substances, the gluten, and all these other things. And if we prepare the plants properly, and that's what all traditional cultures around the world understood. that plants are indigestible and plants don't really feed us. They're difficult to digest. That is why they would put maximum effort into getting meat and getting milk and getting eggs and getting fish. But when they couldn't get these things, so they were in short supply, they would then put a lot of effort into using microbes to pre-digest the plant matter outside our bodies before we actually put these plants into our mouths.
Right.
That is why every traditional culture fermented plant matter, particularly grains, beans, legumes, seeds, nuts, seeds. Every seed of a plant, they always fermented, sprouted, soaked, then cooked, and then after cooking, maybe fermented it again. And only then, because microbes can really digest these things. And if you digest them, pre-digest them in some pot outside your body first, before you actually eat it, then there are more chances that your digestive system will not get damaged by these things, that anti-nutrients will be destroyed, because sprouting and fermentation destroys anti-nutrients, makes plants more benign for us, and more nourishing, because fermentation releases nutrition. It pre-digests the whole mixture for you. Still, even in that shape and form, it depends on the state of your digestive system, how much plant matter you can actually consume. If you've got cast iron, healthy digestive system, you can eat a lot of plants, you'll be okay. Your digestive system will cope. If you prepare the plants properly, outside your body first, of course. But if you've got some damage in your digestive system, it will be less capable of handling plants, because plants are difficult to digest for human beings, and they damage us. Not only the digestive system, but everything else in your body. And the more your digestive system is damaged, less and less plant matter you're able to handle and tolerate. And now we come to a situation where there are already large enough groups of young people in the Western world, and these groups are getting bigger by the day, who cannot tolerate any plant matter at all. Their digestive systems are so damaged, their bodies are so damaged, that they've developed this diet called the primal diet, where they eat no plants at all. They live entirely on animal products. I have stumbled upon this in my clinical practice, where I first was contacted by a mother with a baby with FPIES. That's a terrible condition in a baby.
What was that called?
FPIES. It's food-induced protein enterocolitis syndrome.
Okay.
It's a new diagnostic label, and it's now getting various sub-diagnostic labels and so on, because it's coming upon like an avalanche. These are breastfed babies, exclusively breastfed, nothing else is given to them. Vomiting, diarrhea. The child is not growing, not developing, losing weight. Just dying and literally melting in the mother's hands. Doctors do tests, find that the child is allergic to all protein on the planet. So these children, then the mainstream tries to give them elemental formulas and all sorts of practices, which basically make these children severely disabled mentally and physically, and eventually they die, many of them. Terrible situation. So I had to find a way of healing this baby, and I put this baby on a no plant gaps diet. Not a leaf, not a speck from plant kingdom was allowed. The child lived entirely on animal foods. And the child started recovering, growing, putting weight on. Now this little girl is 7-8 years old, and bushy-tailed, bright-eyed, very clever, doing fantastically at school, very healthy child. She was on a no-plant diet for 4 or 5 years. We could not introduce any vegetable matter at all. Every time we tried even a tiniest amount of vegetable, her diarrhea and vomiting returned because her digestive system was so damaged. Then other children, the same diagnosis started coming up. Now we have a large community of these children online, and the parents actually now work with the no plant gaps diet themselves and spread the knowledge. It's all social media, it's all online now. It's wonderful. They're wonderful mothers, wonderful ladies. Then I started getting children with ulcerative colitis, adults with Crohn's disease, adults with schizophrenia, with OCD, with anorexia, with drug addiction and other things, that I've discovered that actually you had to remove all plant matter in order to help these people. And many of them have been on a no plant gaps diet now for many years. They're doing beautifully. Healthy people, working, paying their taxes, having a life, happy, healthy people. But they have no intentions of introducing any plant matter into their diet at all. Because every time they try, they get sick. They get ill, these people. And autoimmune disease is a major part of that. Autoimmunity, a major part of that. It's actually very helpful. A no plant gaps diet approach without plants at all for people with autoimmune illnesses. So these patients taught me the fact that human beings can live without plants perfectly well. We do not need them. We do not need to eat them at all. But human beings, other groups of patients who went through vegans and vegetarians have taught me that human beings cannot live without animal foods. Cannot. Because only animal foods feed and build and maintain the physical structure of the human body. That vegetarianism and vegans is a major cause of mental illness, autoimmunity, and other diseases amongst our young population nowadays. Everything that you hear about vegetarianism in the mainstream, and that's unfortunately what our teenagers and our young impressionable girls and boys are hearing, you have to turn upside down and then you will see the truth. They tell you that you're saving the planet by being a vegan and vegetarian. The truth is just the opposite. In order to feed hordes of vegetarians and vegans on our planet, you need industrial agriculture. That's the only way you can produce enough plant matter for these people. It is industrial agriculture that is destroying our planet. It is the #1 source of all that carbon up there, and all that nitrogen, and all that ammonia, and up there. All those nitrogenous substances, methane up there, methane release. It is arable industrial agriculture with all its chemicals that it's using on land. The methane that is up there, it comes from nitrogen fertilizers that the arable industrial farmers are addicted to because they've destroyed soils on their fields. Their fields are deserts. What these farmers say, if I don't put chemicals on my farm, on my land, nothing will grow on it at all. Because
I read somewhere recently that cows that are fed with antibiotics produce 4 times the amount of methane they would do usually. So why are they doing that's just crazy?
The #1 methane source on the atmosphere and in the environment are nitrogen fertilizers, applied in enormous amounts and have been applied in enormous amounts for almost 200 years, 150 years or so. On all arable fields around the Western world. And now this practice is spreading rapidly all over the rest of the world. Nitrogen fertilizers, as soon as they sprayed that on the land, it all releases as methane. But of course, they didn't want to attract attention of the population to that fact. So they just developed these lies and manipulation that cows are farting and belching and causing all that methane up there. All animals on the planet are farting and belching, including us human beings. And a human being with abnormal gut flora can produce far more methane than a normal healthy cow, believe me. What you're belching out is far more poisonous than a healthy cow with a healthy digestive system belches out. And cows and other herbivorous animals have been on this planet much longer than we humans have been. They haven't caused any problems. We have much less herbivorous animals on the planet now than we used to 100 years ago or 200 years ago, when there were Great Plains of America, had so many bison. When the first people came there, when the Westerners came, the bison just stretched to horizons. Nobody could even count them. How many millions of heads of bison were there in America? The Westerners killed them all. The bison created very fertile grounds, very fertile land in there, meters of topsoil, rich topsoil full of microbes. And then the Westerners obviously plowed all of that, started using chemicals, destroyed the soil. So in the 20th century, we had that dust bowl. All that fertile land got destroyed. Winds picked up all that dust and blew it to the Atlantic Ocean and dropped it into the ocean. So now the whole middle of America is a semi-desert. Used to be rich lands created by the bison over millions of years. That's what herbivorous animals do. They create topsoil. Topsoil is almost pure carbon. It absorbs huge amounts of carbon and it holds it in a stable form in the soil. Every time we plow the soil, apply chemicals to it, we're destroying that structure of the soil and we're releasing carbon. And that is what the arable industrial agriculture does. It is arable industrial agriculture, growing plants for us, grains, beans, oils, seeds, vegetables, fruit, that is causing the global warming and destroying this planet. The only way to feed hordes of vegans and vegetarians is through that model of agriculture. You cannot feed them any other way. So by being a vegan and vegetarian, you are destroying the planet. So if you are trying to be a vegan to save the planet, please stop. Please educate yourself. Please read this book and some other very, very good books in the world, which are produced by honest scientists and honest people, not propaganda from the mainstream, from those global corporations who are destroying this planet altogether. Many people believe that veganism and vegetarianism is healthy for them. I've just explained why it is not healthy. It is not feeding you at all. Veganism, it is possible to be a healthy vegetarian as long as you continue eating some animal foods to sustain your physical structure, such as full-fat dairy and eggs, and occasional meat and fish as well. And even that is dodgy. Even then you can get ill, depending on what you do with your plant matter, how you prepare it. If you live on macaroni, cheese, and sugar and soft drinks and Kellogg cornflakes, you're going to get sick very quickly, very, very quickly.
You are what you eat, definitely.
Exactly. So you will be overweight, and in fact, majority of vegetarians are overweight.
Yeah, that I've noticed that actually. Yeah, it's quite common.
Yes, because the overweight, the obesity epidemic, the cause of it are processed carbohydrates. Your breakfast cereals, your bread, pasta, sugar, cakes, biscuits, overprocessed vegetables, overprocessed fruit, and sugar, and soft drinks, of course. Huge cause of obesity epidemic, and cause of Alzheimer's disease, and cause of diabetes and heart disease and cancer and other diseases which form a group called a metabolic syndrome, which I have described in my red book. I have several books and this one. This is where I explain to people where heart disease comes from, what causes it. It is not cholesterol, and it is not animal fats. Those things are essential to maintain your physical structure, particularly your brain capacity. Vegetarians and vegans lose their brains.
I was going to ask you actually about cholesterol, because there's so much conflicting information about cholesterol. Some people say it's really bad. Some people say you need one type and not the other. Some people say it's all good. Our brains are made up primarily of cholesterol and water, aren't they? So I would imagine our brain needs a constant supply of cholesterol to stay healthy. Is there anybody on the planet that needs a statin at the end of the day?
No. Statins are the cause of Alzheimer's epidemic. Period. There was no Alzheimer's disease on the planet before statins were invented.
I did wonder actually, when I was at school in the 80s, we were made to watch videos, I can remember, about how evil butter was, how evil eggs was, and we had to eat margarine, avoid all these good foods that we know about now. I sometimes wondered if that was the initial, that caused the initial upsurge in things like Alzheimer's and dementia, possibly.
Absolutely. Your brain is a high-fat organ. It requires large amounts of fats, and vast majority, 99% of these fats must come from animals, not from plants. They must be. So butter makes you clever, gives you good eyesight, makes you bright, intelligent, gives you beautiful glowing skin, normal hormonal balance, and normal good health. Butter, eggs, and other cholesterol-rich foods. Cholesterol is one of the most essential elements in the human body. Large percent of your body is made of cholesterol. It's a building material that you are made of. Remember, 50% of your dry weight is fat. And most of that fat are saturated fats and cholesterol. Your brain is particularly rich in cholesterol. Almost 40% of your brain is cholesterol. And the brain sponges up majority of cholesterol from your blood that's flowing in your blood. Your hormones, all your steroid hormones are made out of cholesterol. Your immune system is largely made out of cholesterol. So when you start taking statins, your brain goes, you start developing Alzheimer's disease, Your immune status goes, you can't resist any infections, so you start dying from infections. Your hormonal balance goes haywire all over the place, so you start getting all sorts of problems, and all sorts of other terrible things happen in the body. The body produces its own cholesterol. There is a factory inside your liver that manufactures cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
And every time your body needs cholesterol for making hormones, for repairing your brain tissue, for sitting an exam, or doing anything else, your immune system, if it's doing something with an infection, dealing with some virus or something, they will send a call to the liver saying, I need cholesterol. So the liver will switch on that factory, manufacture the cholesterol, package it appropriately, because that's a fat-soluble substance. It can't travel in a water-based blood without proper packaging. That's the LDLs, that low-density cholesterol. Puts it in the blood, and the blood delivers it to the right organ, to the right place. There is no way of stopping that process or changing that process with any kind of diet. If you eat less cholesterol, your body will just work harder to manufacture its own. Your liver will work harder. The only way to stop it is through taking these drugs, statins. Because what statins do, they break that factory in your liver. They stop it. So your liver cannot manufacture cholesterol. As a result, your brain starts melting, dying, starving. So your memory goes, your personality changes, you become cranky, you become aggressive, unpleasant, and can go all the way to committing a crime, some violent crime. You become violent. Basically, you can become violent. Your hormonal balance becomes abnormal. Your muscles get dismantled, so you can damage your kidneys very seriously, because the protein out of muscles gets released and they block up the filter in the kidneys. So you can destroy your kidneys because of statins. Statins are one of the most malevolent, malicious inventions of our big pharma.
Yep.
And that is the part of that global, that tangle of that global multi-trillion corporations which have fingers in every pie. That's all petroleum age. Most of them are made out of petroleum. We live in an age of petroleum medicine, whose primary purpose is to sell petroleum products. Doctors are the sales force for the big pharma. And unfortunately, good people who go into the medical profession don't realize that until it's quite late for them to leave. By then, they've invested so many years into that education, into that path. They've got mortgages, they've got families to feed. It's too late for them. And they're so brainwashed, so thoroughly brainwashed. The whole idea about fat and cholesterol causing heart disease comes from a faulty, malicious theory, hypothesis called the diet heart hypothesis, proposed by a very dishonest, bad person, downright bad person, in 1950s in America. And this was specifically then picked up by big pharma, by big agriculture, by all those those corporations, and they poured money into it, and they made it the common knowledge all over the world. And based on it, they were producing low-fat and no-fat foods and statin drugs and all sorts of things. And science has caught up with them eventually, honest science, because a large percent of science in the world is funded by these corporations. It serves them. It doesn't serve the truth. It serves them. And they're very ready to publish the findings of that science. But there is a true science. There is a real scientists in the world, and they have caught up with it a few decades ago. They have proven conclusively that that theory, that hypothesis is entirely wrong, completely wrong. Fats and cholesterol do not cause heart disease. In fact, they prevent heart disease and they reverse it. The more butter you eat, the healthier your heart is. The more eggs you consume, the healthier your brain is. If you have any memory loss, if you have any kind of beginning of Alzheimer's or any problem in that department, you need to eat lots of eggs and butter and bacon. Then you will restore the structure of your brain. You will restore it.
Sorry, I'm smiling because I love all these foods. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. So, as I say, everything in the mainstream, you take the mainstream propaganda, what you hear, turn it upside down, and you will see the truth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the government tells me to do something, I generally do the complete opposite. And I find that works every time. So,
and for decades, we were thinking that the governments were just misguided, misinformed, that we need to educate them, and so on and so forth. But now, the events of the last year and a half have now opened our eyes. Majority of people around the planet have now realized that these people have never been misguided. All of these policies were deliberate. They have their agenda. It is all deliberate.
And would this be to do with trying to reduce the population, do you think? Is there too many people in the world, or?
Yes, there was a man called Malthus in the 1980s who wrote this document saying that the planet is overpopulated. And according to his calculations, our planet can only sustain maximum 1.5 billion people. And many people believed this person, and that's how Malthusian belief was formed in the world, Malthusian society. And many people, generations of people grew up with these ideas, and they called Malthusians. That's a Malthusian movement around the world. They really believe that our planet is so silly and so incapable that it cannot sustain more than 1.5 billion people, and preferably even 1 billion. And it's these Malthusians, eugenicists, who grew up in generations of Malthusian belief, that are now running these global corporations. They're running the world. These are the 1% of humanity. There is a wonderful statement, a wonderful book written by Vandana Shiva called Oneness Against 1%. And she gives all the statistics in that book that 1% of humanity owns 99% of resources of our planet. These are the super wealthy elite of the world. People who run global corporations, people who run all of these industries around the world. They are Malthusians, these people. The Malthusian belief is solidly planted into that community. And this 1% of humanity is destroying the planet. They are destroying it through fracking, through mining, through their industrial agriculture, through their food industry, through their medicine, through their big pharma, through all of their activities. They're destroying life on Earth. But of course, they're not going to blame themselves for all of that. They're going to blame those poor 7 billion people all over the world who have got a garden where they grow their own vegetables using manure and compost, have a goat in the garden, have their chickens, produce their own food, living on subsistence level. These people, these billions of people, are restoring the planet. They're reversing the damage that 1% is doing to the planet. In fact, I don't believe that our planet is overpopulated at all. That is a malicious propaganda. Our planet can sustain much more people than there are already people here, as long as these people don't want to live like Bill Gates, don't want to live like Zuckerberg or royalty, have palaces all over the place, have cars, have airplanes, have helicopters, have companies, have billions, As long as these people all go down back to the grassroots, to the land, start growing their own food, working in their gardens, restoring, regenerating soil in their country, soil that has been damaged and destroyed by that 1% of humanity through their industrial agriculture, and do have animals, and do have chickens, and do produce their own food, and eat from the soil. These are the beautiful people who hold the truth. The truth on our planet exists only in nature, at the grassroots. And that's where majority of humanity lives. And they're actually saving this planet, reversing the damage of this planet. And the fact that industrial agriculture exists doesn't mean that we have to eat stuff that they produce. They will tell you that they're feeding the world. Not true. 85% of humanity, and that is a scientific fact, 85% of humanity are not fed by industrial agriculture. 85%, vast majority. They are fed by subsistence farming in all those poor countries where people do have their own garden and their own animals and their own chickens, and they produce their own food and feed all their neighbors and feed the local community by growing that. And they all use natural methods. They use manure, they use compost, they use natural practices. So they create soil, these people. They restore the atmosphere. They capture carbon from atmosphere, lock it up in soil by using manure, by using their natural practices. They capture methane from the atmosphere and lock it up in the soil. They're reversing global warming, these people.
Fantastic, yeah. So I wasn't planning on asking you this actually, but as we've sort of been talking about the New World Order, or whatever you want to call them, They've obviously pushed agendas like veganism recently and various other ones we've mentioned. I've got to be honest, I'm a bit of a climate change skeptic, because that's another agenda they seem to be pushing really, really hard. And given their, sort of track record and their history of, doing these things, it kind of makes me think maybe it's a load of old rubbish.
Well, if you talk to people who live on coral atolls and islands all over the world, global warming is very real for them.
Right. It's got nothing to do with sun cycles or...
Their islands are disappearing. And the ice caps are melting around the world. That is another fact. Whether this is a natural cycle of our planet, a natural cycle of the sun, or whether humanity is contributing to this, we don't know. We don't really know. That 1% of the humanity of those people who are possessed by psychopathic greed, basically. People possessed by greed. They are trying to damage because they've been doing chemtrails. They've been spraying toxic chemicals from airplanes all over the world. It's called geoengineering, control of the climate and so on. But the particles that they're spraying all over us and all over the land, many of them are heavy metals, toxic metals, and there are some downright sinister nanoparticles that they're spraying, which are getting into all life forms on the planet and cause disease all over the place. The chemtrails must stop. They must stop. But because these people, these psychopaths, they control all the governments serve them. From time immemorial, people need to understand this, that from time immemorial, from the first government that appeared on our planet, these governments served the wealthy. They never served people, and they never will, and they do not serve the populations of their countries. They give you the narrative and the myth and the story, particularly democratic, the democracy myth, that, oh, we're serving you, you elect us, we're serving you. No. They always serve the wealthy, and they will continue doing that, and they're doing that now. Every government in the world is serving global corporations.
And yet this message seems to be so hard to break down to your average person. Most people just can't accept that, or I don't know what it is, but I mean, more and more people are waking up to all this. There's no doubt about that at all. But at the same time, there's people in my family, I've got friends, and it doesn't matter what you say to them or how you put it, they just will not accept it. They just cannot accept it.
Because people live in fear. It is too scary for them to accept it. It shatters their whole safety bubble that they live in. As long as they believe that there is some benevolent government looking after them, out there somewhere, because I've elected, I went on and I voted once a year somewhere to some person that you don't know from Adam, who gave you some spiel, you read that spiel and you voted for that person. People live in fear. Fear has a very low level of vibration. As long as you live in fear, you are easily lied to, easily deceived, and easily manipulated. And that's exactly what has happened. And mainstream, that 1% that owns the world and rules the world, they have been using fear for centuries, for thousands of years, to control the population. As long as people are afraid, they're easily controllable. And when Nuremberg process was going on after the Second World War, after Germans have lost the Second World War, the Nazis lost, they've asked the right hand of Himmler, when he was judged, how did you manage to convince German people to do all these atrocities? His answer was very profound. He said that easy, fear. As long as you keep the population in fear, they will do any heinous thing and they will find justifications for it. And the whole charade, the COVID charade that they've launched in 2019, which, by the way, they've prepared for decades, they've rehearsed, they've prepared to release this virus from the Wuhan laboratory and the rest of it. It was a scenario that they've rehearsed and prepared, and we have evidence for that, solid evidence for that. Before they've done that, they've been using fear for a very long time to control the population. And the fear works through advertising. What is a formula for any advertisement? People buying in a consumer society, people buy majority of stuff we buy, we don't need. We Really, we buy things we never need, and it would never occur to us that I need this thing and I need to use it in my life. So how do these corporations convince you to buy stuff that you don't need? Very simple formula. First, they scare you and then provide a solution. They create concoct some kind of lie. Oh, there's a scary thing out there, this, and that. And then provide this, we've got this product for you that will fix this particular aspect of your fear. And unfortunately, many people in the world love living in fear. They wake up in the morning looking for something to be afraid of. And of course, the mainstream media always provides.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mainstream media is part and parcel of that 1% of humanity. It is their tool for controlling the population. It's a propaganda machine. And it's become completely and particularly clear in this last year and a half.
So I threw out my TV about 15 years ago. I've been TV free for a long time. And I've got a lot of friends in the awake community. And I'm forever trying to persuade them to do the same and to throw the TV out. If most people did that, it's game over, surely, because they've lost their main source of control and fear. So
not just TV, but journals, magazines, newspapers, internet, the big tech, big internet, the Google, Wikipedia, all of that. These are all propaganda machines.
Yeah.
And what another thing that emerged, that freedom of speech just doesn't exist anymore. It's been completely destroyed because we have in the world millions of intelligent, honest, decent scientists, medics, people who are qualified, professionally qualified, to tell you what exactly is going on. But they've been censored out from all mainstream media. They've been pronounced to be quacks. They've been pronounced to be conspiracy theorists. So all the truth nowadays is the conspiracy theories. So if your mainstream media outlet tells you that that's conspiracy theory, don't listen to that. That's exactly what you want to listen to.
I think that
whatever mainstream says, turn it upside down and you see the truth.
But I think more people are seeing through that now, because they're pushing the conspiracy theory title, whatever, so much now for anything they don't agree with, that I think even more people are starting to question than previously because of that tactic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every doctor, medic, real, honest, decent doctor who works in hospitals or wherever else, they all up in arms. There are now associations, groups of doctors formed. People come out on the streets. People try to publish documents. They try to educate the population, but all of it gets censored out, destroyed, pronounced conspiracy theories. These doctors are maligned. They're told that they're charlatans and quacks and whatever else. So nowadays, if you want to get the truth, it is charlatans and quacks you want to listen to. And it's conspiracy theories that you want to study. And no, because what you're getting from the mainstream media is lies and manipulation.
Completely. Wow. I wasn't too sure if you thought that way, actually. I mean, I've read your books and I'm a huge fan of everything you've written about to do with health and gaps. But I wasn't, like I say, I wasn't too sure. So it's wonderful to hear you saying that. You know, it's great. It needs to be said at the end of the day, you know?
Absolutely.
It needs to be said. So I think on that point, that's probably a great place to wrap it up. Okay. So if my listeners, viewers want to find out more about you, buy your books, maybe have you got a website, etc., that I can link?
My main work is gaps, and it's 2 books. I'll show you the books for people who never heard of me. Yes, it's gut and psychology syndrome and gut and physiology syndrome. Right. 2 books. Right. Which explain where every chronic disease comes from and provides a solid protocol that has been around for 20 years now, which will heal you from all kinds of so-called incurable diseases. I have now don't believe that anything is incurable, because I have seen so many people with multiple sclerosis, with rheumatoid arthritis, schizophrenia, autism, cancer, all sorts of so-called incurable, terrible diseases who recover. Recover beautifully. So if you want to really recover, if you don't want just a pill to suppress your symptoms and continue eating your chocolate donuts, if you want a proper address to root cause of your disorder and really heal your body, that's the route you need to take. And my website is gaps.me, GAPS, Gut and Psychology, Gut and Physiology Syndrome, .me.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll link all that underneath the video. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. The information is just so profound. I'm going to share it far and wide. So thank you so much, Dr. Natasha. Cheers.
That's a pleasure, and thank you for your work. Thank you for spreading the news, for spreading the knowledge.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.